The crystal spires of Station Theta 7 pierced the void like frozen lightning, a monument to humanity's stubborn refusal to be confined to a single world. Here at the edge of known space, 1,000 species mingled in the great orbital marketplace. And here, Melissa served coffee. She wasn't supposed to be there. Earthborn humans rarely ventured this far into the Galactic Collective's territory, where ancient empires regarded them as curious upstarts, barely civilized children playing with fire. But Melissa had needed to escape, and the universe was vast enough to swallow one waitress whole. The cafe was called the Nebula's Rest, wedged between an oxygen bar and a quantum weapons dealer. Melissa had worked there for 3 cycles now, learning to navigate the peculiar customs of 100 different species. She'd mastered the art of serving sulfur-based beverages without gagging, learned which species considered eye contact an insult, and discovered that humans had one unexpected advantage in this cosmic melting pot: their hands. Human sign language, it turned out, was uniquely suited to cross-species communication. While other races relied on pheromones, telepathy, or elaborate color changes, humans had developed a visual language that transcended vocal limitations. Melissa had learned ASL from her deaf brother back on Earth, never imagining it would become her most valuable skill among the stars. It was a slow morning when they arrived. The Dragon King entered first, and the cafe fell silent. Melissa had never seen a draconian before. Few humans had, but she recognized him instantly from the whispered legends. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scales shimmering with an iridescence that hurt to look at directly. His eyes were molten gold, ancient and terrible, carrying the weight of a civilization that had conquered stars when humanity was still learning to make fire. Behind him came his son. Burak was smaller, barely 2 meters, his scales a duller bronze that suggested youth. He moved with his father's fluid grace but kept his eyes downcast, his clawed hands held awkwardly at his sides. As they passed through the cafe, Melissa noticed something that made her chest tighten. Every species in the room turned away. The Draconian Empire was the oldest and most powerful force in the known galaxy. They had subjugated hundreds of worlds. Their fleets were unstoppable, their technology incomprehensible. To disrespect a Draconian, especially the Dragon King himself, was to invite annihilation. But they all looked away from Burak, Melissa's manager. A 6-armed Hexian named Trell scuttled over to their table personally. The Dragon King spoke in the common tongue, his voice like stones grinding together. "We require sustenance. Bring your finest offerings." Burak's hands moved, quick, desperate gestures that Melissa recognized immediately as attempts at communication. But his father didn't look at him. Trell didn't look at him. The other patrons studied their drinks with sudden fascination. The young Draconian was mute, Melissa realized. And in a society that valued strength and dominance above all else, that made him invisible. She should have walked away. She should have let Trell handle the most dangerous customers the cafe had ever seen. But Melissa had spent too many years watching her brother be ignored, dismissed, treated as less than because he couldn't speak the way others expected. She grabbed her datapad and walked over. "Welcome to the Nebula's Rest," she said, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "I'm Melissa and I'll be serving you today." The Dragon King's eyes fixed on her and she felt the temperature around her drop. Up close he was terrifying, ancient, powerful, utterly alien. But she'd faced down angry customers before. This was just another shift. "You are human," he stated, as if identifying a particularly unremarkable insect. "Yes, sir." She turned to Burak and began signing as she spoke. "And what would you like to drink?" The cafe went absolutely still. Burak's eyes, brilliant gold like his father's, went wide. His hands trembled as they rose, forming signs that Melissa recognized despite their alien configuration. The language was different, but the structure was similar enough. "You can understand me?" She smiled and signed back. "I'm learning. Please help me understand." The young Draconian's hands moved faster, more confidently. Around them, the other patrons whispered in a dozen languages. The Dragon King stared at his son as if seeing him for the first time. Over the next hour, Melissa served them. But more importantly, she listened, not with her ears but with her eyes, watching as Burak's hands painted stories in the air. He told her about the 17 worlds he'd visited, about stellar phenomena that had no human names, about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who refused to see you, and his father watched. How do you do this? The Dragon King finally asked, his voice softer than before. My son has been trained by the finest scholars in the Empire. None could bridge this gap. Melissa set down a fresh pot of their preferred beverage, something that looked like liquid starlight and smelled of ozone. With respect, Your Majesty, maybe they were trying to fix him instead of listening to him. The temperature dropped again, but Melissa stood her ground. She'd already crossed too many lines to retreat now. Humans, the Dragon King said slowly, are supposed to be weak, primitive, short-lived, and insignificant. We are all of those things, Melissa agreed, signing simultaneously for Burak, who watched the exchange with fierce attention. But we're also stubborn. We don't believe anyone is broken just because they're different. We've learned that strength comes in many forms. Burak's hands moved again urgently. His father watched, and this time, finally he tried to understand. Before they left, the Dragon King placed a crystal card on the table. This is a draconian imperial credit, he said. It has no limit. We will return tomorrow. You don't need to pay me extra for doing my job, Melissa protested. This is not payment for service. The Dragon King's eyes glittered. It is tribute for teaching me to see my own son. As they left, Burak turned back, his hands forming careful signs. Thank you. You gave me my voice. Melissa signed back. You always had it. The universe just needed to learn to listen. After they departed, Trell approached, all 6 arms trembling. Do you have any idea what you've done? That was the Dragon King. He could have vaporized this entire station. I served coffee and had a conversation, Melissa said simply. Same as any other customer. But as she cleaned their table, she smiled. Because she'd learned something that the ancient empires, with all their power and technology, had forgotten. Sometimes the most human thing you could do was simply see someone. And sometimes that changed everything.